was mentored in the past, I know that it helped me in my career as to what I was trying to achieve and what direction, and having somebody to bounce those kind of ideas and thoughts off, and concerns sometimes, is always useful. And you can do it in a very relaxed manner. There's nothing formal really about it in that way. So it's been a good experience, I think, for me to be on both sides of the table, and I've learned from it from being on both sides of the table. Having somebody that you can talk to, in the case of being this side of the table, it's probably been there, right, and has that experience and can help you bring to bear. I think mentoring inside a company can also help you, particularly with newer employees, to understand how to navigate around a company structure and a company varieties that come with a company that's grown up over time. So I think it can help you in many different ways. What I got when I was on the other side of the table was advice as to what you should be doing about certain situations. Sometimes it can be very tactical, so it can be very short-term advice. Sometimes it can be more strategic. It's about, hey, I want to get somewhere in a number of years, how do I go about it? So what I hope they get from that is that they get some ideas on how they should go about that. They get some constructive criticism sometimes, which can be very useful. And I think people take that better in a mentoring environment than they would do in a pure appraisal, because this is something they've come to you for and you've offered to them. So therefore they view it in a slightly different way. And hopefully what they gain from it is progression within their career.
I would like to think they got quite a few benefits out of it, because you would do as a mentor. But I think they'd like to have experience with someone who's probably travelled the path before, been there before. That does help. I think there's networking benefits for the mentee, because you can actually pass them on to somebody else that you might know, or someone to talk to, or perhaps something you've read or something you've learned from, so they can learn from that. I think visibility is something from their perspective. I think a personalised assistance program, effectively you've got someone you can trust who can help you get on in your career. But I think one of the biggest things is, for me, certainly in my previous parts of being a mentor, is just for them being able to, I think we all have issues in our work, and the things that keep us awake at night. Those things that are annoying us. It might be relationships, it might be politics, it might be just how to get things done. And sometimes you can't talk to your colleagues or superior about some of these things because you might lose face, might annoy somebody. And it's always good to talk to a mentor about this, so that the mentor can listen and understand that issue and then say, well, have you thought about this, or have you thought about that, or if I were you, this might be a helpful way of going about this, or I've had this problem before myself and this is how I cope with it. And I think that's probably a very useful thing for people to have. In other words, a trusted ear to talk about some of the problems internal to themselves, which they probably couldn't talk to their friends and wife about, because they probably wouldn't understand what they're talking about.
Overall, I think the mentoring is important to our organisation. People come to work for the most part to strive to achieve, to excel themselves, to accomplish more each day, and the mentoring process can really help that. That can be quite effective in helping people to move to the next level.
I think for me, what it is, it's helped me be a better manager, from both sides, again, from learning off of people, but also being able to manage people. I think it's very important that as a company you try and strive to get the best out of people and help them develop as far as they can. I think becoming a mentor helps you develop as a person, as a manager. I think it is really good to be able to say to somebody, hey, you know Fred who's over there in that position, I helped them get there. You don't have to necessarily say it, you just know it. So it's always good to see people who you've mentored or you encouraged taking up senior positions within the company, or maybe even within a different company, over the years. That's where you get the real pleasure out of it. And also you learn, if you're mentoring within a company, you learn more about the company as well. Because in those sessions, the person will be talking to you about, yes, what they want to do, but they'll be talking about what they're coming up against. So you can actually learn some of the things that are happening in the company that you wouldn't otherwise know. Right? So again, as a manager, your job is to understand how to take barriers away from people. In the mentoring, you're doing it for an individual, but you can learn from that individual actually there's barriers in the company that are stopping more than that individual developing. Right? So you might be helping them around a process, how do I do this, how do I do that, that can enable you to see things in a different way from the company perspective and do some changes that could affect a whole lot of people. So there is a lot that you can get out of this.
I think you, by hearing other people, you sort of put yourself in their position, and you do start to learn a little bit about yourself, and saying, I should be doing this, or perhaps I should be doing that, or the company should be doing this or doing that as well. So you do learn a lot as a mentor, hearing other people's points of view. I think the things I probably get out of it is I do learn from it, most definitely, but I like to believe I'm helping the company and helping emerging people going forward. So bringing emerging people up and going forward is helping the company in some way. It's giving back to people who are going on and be hopefully taking your position at some stage in the future. And it's good to see those people grow. And I think I certainly find a lot of benefit and interest in doing that. I was sales director at Unisys before, and I had a mentee working for me. And that person is now head of BT sales after being head of Unisys sales. So I like to think it does help by giving a little bit of advice. And that particular person often talks to me and says, remember that session you told me about this, I still use it today. So there are still things they still learn from yourself, and they're still using the same principles that you had before in the past. So I think that's quite nice, and you feel like you've given something back, and they keep in contact with you. And still funny enough, he still asks me advice even though he's in a very senior position. I said, what would you do if this happened? And so you do have good friends from it as well.
The benefits are huge. I mean, there are so many. You learn more about more details about the sort of work that people undertake, their working environment, some of the challenges that you simply are unaware of. So it helps me to understand a lot more about the business and where the pitfalls lie. And it can inform the bigger picture sometimes, because you can learn things which you can see. You look at something and you sort of think, well, if that's happening here, that's probably happening elsewhere in the organisation, and actually that's probably a bigger problem than just this one discussion. So it can inform our policy and approach to the people and development agenda. So that's a huge benefit.
I think the biggest concern about being a mentor is having the time, which sounds a bit strange because you've got to commit time to it. And when you're in senior positions or more senior positions, your time becomes very valuable to you and to the company. So therefore, having that ability to carve that out and that the relationship would be right. I think again, personalities work when it comes into this, and you can have different personalities that just can't work together, right? Or meant together, that's probably a better word. So I think you need to establish that very quickly. Right?
I think natural worries are that, is my mentee going to like me? We're all humans, and you hope that the chemistry is going to be there, but it's not always. Am I actually going to be able to make a difference? Because we all come to work to make a difference, and I don't want to waste my mentee's time. I don't want to waste my time with something that isn't delivering what my mentee needs. There is that old chestnut of time. It's so difficult to fit things into the agenda, and mentoring is something that you can't approach half-hearted at all. You have to be fully present for every session. You have to absolutely be focused on your mentee. That's absolutely the least that they deserve. And that's how you get the most from the session. So it's actually finding the time and resources to make sure that I was able to deliver at that level all of the time for my mentee. The reality is, timing has been a challenge, but the mentoring sessions reinforce the commitment to make the time. So you start to really recalculate your agenda and start to think about what can slip further down the priority list so that you can give mentoring the priority that it needs. So, and I think the deliverables and watching people progress and grow is actually so rewarding. It helps that process.
I suppose some people say time, but it's not really a lot of time actually. Quite frankly, you know, if I take the times I've had, often it's, you probably start with an hour talking, and there might be some other times an hour, but often it's 15 minutes, or it's just, you know, half an hour, or even just 10 minutes just talking. You don't have to be there all the time doing 1 hour sessions. So time isn't really the issue. And it could be any time of day as well. I mean, many people will work on the way to work, or in the evening, or it might be at lunchtime, or wherever. People need to find a half an hour, quarter of an hour to have a quick conversation. And so it's not really a time-consuming issue, especially if you're enjoying it.
Skills you need in a mentor, a mouth and 2 ears, and use them in that way round. When you're mentoring, right, you want to listen to the person and then give them advice. Right, so good communications, right, the ability to listen to what a person's asking you for, and also pulling them out of themselves a little bit. Inside a company that can be difficult sometimes because they may be talking about issues that you also understand from both sides. But you've got to kind of separate yourself from it, and you've got to see yourself almost being there to guide and advise that person, rather than necessarily being a boss or a peer or whatever. You've got to take yourself out of that. So I think those are important skills: communications, listening, help and guidance. Probably having more of an EQ than an IQ sometimes, right? So that you can relate to the person and help them as to what they want to do. As I say, it goes back to trying to provide as much as you can to help enable that person to progress as far as they can, or as far as they want.
You don't have an open-ended outcome with a mentoring relationship. You have to have a clear goal in mind and some clear outputs for the individual, so that you can focus on and work through what you need.
With regards to working with a mentee, I think in terms of a relationship, I think one of the things you've got to do is ensure that you empathise with the mentee. They've all got issues in work. We all have issues in work, and you want to have somebody you can trust. So I think a relationship has got to be built on trust. It's got to be built on emphasis towards their issues, so you understand what their issues are, and then give them empathy back again to say, yes, I understand, and how I can possibly help you with some experience I may have to assist you in the future. And so that development creates a trust and confidence between the mentor and the mentee.
I think if you're looking to become a mentor, you need to look at it properly, right? And as much as what seems at first like, oh, just sit down and have a chat, right? Which is a large part of it, right? It's more about, you know, being available, learning a little bit more about that person, and being on hand when that advice is needed. So although you have mentoring sessions, that shouldn't stop the people talking to each other outside of that. You don't have to wait for the next mentoring session in a couple of months' time. You know, you have that ability to pick up the phone and say, hey, I've got something happening now, can you help me?
I think it's really important to understand your own motivations for it. If you are looking to put your head onto someone else's shoulders, that's not going to work. Mentoring is important because it's about empowering other people, and we don't always empower other people if we impose our views onto someone else. And it's very easy to fall into that viewpoint that your way is the right way because it's always delivered results. Everybody is different, and I think to be a successful mentor you do need to understand that the same or better results can be accomplished by doing them in a slightly different way. So the role of the mentor isn't necessarily about telling someone how to do something, it's about empowering them and helping them to understand how best they can using your experience and their own experience to be able to deliver. So I think the advice is question your own motivations for wanting to do it. Be prepared to be open and honest. It's not a directive role at all. And be prepared to learn as well, because there's so much learning to be had.
I certainly enjoyed it, and I certainly found it as pleasurable as I thought it might be. And I think some of the things that were probably some of the shocks that you get out of it was that you think a lot of people know things that you take for granted, and it sort of brings it out that people are learning all the time, you know, and you do need to teach people. Just because you've been there before doesn't mean everyone knows what you know, so it's always good to pass that information on that you perhaps learned from in the past. It's not like being an old person and sort of, you know, I've been there before, hearing your mum and dad saying, you know, what you should do, son, is do this. It's not that at all. It's just sort of saying, you know, I can see that person hasn't come here before, they haven't learned that yet. I take it for granted that people should know that, but you know, quite frankly, we don't teach people very often. So through a mentor, they actually get that knowledge much easier than they would get elsewhere. You won't find them on a training, often these types of advice you won't find on a standard management training course, because they are real life incidents which you have to try and help them with. The advice I would say was just go and enjoy it. I think it's something which I think you'd find very helpful to yourself as well, and I think it helps you grow as a person in terms of being a mentor, and I think by doing that, I think, not that I do it for this reason, but you will find yourself that people see you as a person that you can go to, and it's not just within the circle of being a mentor and a mentee, but other people in the company will know that you are at that sort of level to be able to give advice, and I think your career should grow with that as well. Certainly I found in other companies, mentors tend to grow, and the mentees tend to grow.